Well, good morning and welcome to Digital Risk, protecting your most important asset. Before we get started, we do have a couple of housekeeping items to review. Well, everybody's muted, so there is no background noise. There is a Q&A window that is available for use for any questions or comments that you may have. In addition to introducing our guest, I'll also serve as the moderator. There'll be a time available after the webinar to ask any questions. We'll either answer them during the webinar or set up a time to answer your specific questions. We will provide contact information as well at the end of the webinar for you to get in touch with us at Lam Tech. In addition to our live webinar, we'll also provide a link to the recording should you want to review what you learned today or want to share your knowledge with another person in your organization, or even want to show someone that you may want to refer Lam Tech to. Now, without further housekeeping items, let's get officially started. Again, good morning. I'm Doug Sokolowski, the account manager for Lam Tech. We welcome you and thank you for your time on today's webinar. Give you a little bit of insight of what we do. Lam Tech aligns IT solutions with your growth initiatives, and our goal overall is to take care of your technology so you can focus on your day-to-day business and stop expanding those problems. Lam Tech offers managed services to maintain your security, your help desk support, consulting, as well as data recovery and backup services. Now, today's overall theme is digital risk, protecting your most important asset. We'll hear from one of our experts in the field about how a compromised credential can lead to a data breach. Also, what exactly do cybercriminals do with stolen credentials? Get an overview of the current threat for small businesses, and also learn about steps you can take, not only educate yourself, but your whole entire team to create that ultimate culture of cybersecurity. In a moment, we'll be hearing from Channel Success Manager of Kaseya, Katie Wallace. Katie is a subject matter expert on the dark web, and she assists with partners to think outside the box when it comes to security as well as compliance. She has a passion for helping people, and ultimately she has a goal to align her partner's vision with software functionality and service capabilities. Katie assists all kinds of organizations, from anything from one person to small business to larger organizations, and we're pleased to have her with us today as one of our great Lam Tech partners. So without further ado, good morning, Katie. How are you today?
Doug, good morning. Good morning. Doing well. I appreciate the warm welcome, and I am certainly excited to jump into, today's current threat landscape and the digital risk that a lot of organizations are up against. Let me go ahead.
I was going to say very good on that, Katie, and we look forward to your presentation here today. So let's jump right into it.
Absolutely. So without further ado, let me go ahead and share my screen here. Let me know when it is visible.
We can see it, Katie.
Perfect. Perfect. So like Doug mentioned, today we're really going to focus on the changes of the security landscape and look at the ways that our information is exposed on the dark web. Recently, we've gone through a lot of changes to our work environment, and with those changes, we've seen an increase in cybercriminals trying to profit from our data and from our information. Unfortunately, cybercrime on the dark web, it is run like a business where these cybercriminals are making money off of our data and information associated with our businesses. We're going to focus today on how the dark web is a huge marketplace for stolen data from a business perspective and for personal information. But before we get into that, I want to talk about all of these different ways that our information is winding up in this space called the dark web. After a data breach or a hacking incident, personal and business information is often bought and sold on the dark web by identity thieves looking to make money off of our information, our good name, and any number associated with us. You may ask, why not just shut down the dark web if it's only used for crime? Well, the dark web itself was actually created by the US Department of Defense for whistleblower situations, allowing their sources to remain anonymous. And the dark web isn't all used for cybercrime. It's actually used by a lot of folks in countries with repressed speech as a way that they keep up to date with information. However, I feel like whether you watch your local or your national news, you've likely heard a story that has mentioned phishing attacks, ransomware, and data breaches. Again, these opportunist crooks or cyber criminals are even exploiting the coronavirus as part of their attempts to gain access to our information. Modern cyber attacks, such as a sophisticated phishing attack, can be highly profitable with a seemingly low success rate around 1% for these cyber criminals. The cost of launching a phishing attack is low, and a single successful phishing attack can yield thousands or even millions of dollars in revenue for a cyber criminal. Phishing itself is a type of social engineering where a cyber criminal sends a fraudulent or a spoofed message designed to trick a victim into revealing sensitive information to that cyber criminal. Or we've also seen phishing attacks be used to deploy malicious software that attacks the victim's infrastructure, like ransomware. Phishing attacks have become increasingly sophisticated and often transparently mirror the site that's being targeted, allowing the attacker to observe everything while the victim is navigating on the website. And again, this tricks anybody into sharing their information and getting it into the wrong hands. As of 2021, phishing is by far the most common type of attack performed by cyber criminals, with the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center recording over twice as many incidents of phishing than any other type of computer crime. Switching gears for a moment, hearing about businesses like Capital One, Equifax, and Facebook, these are just a few examples of companies who've been in the news recently for going through data breaches. Data breaches are one of the top concerns for today's organizations. The cost of data breaches continues to increase, with the average global cost of a single breach hovering just over $3 million. Beyond the financial consequences of a breach, network security is hugely important for any business because an attack compromise can cost you the trust of your customers. In fact, 60% of small companies go out of business within 6 months of falling victim to a data breach or a cyber attack, with both the financial and the reputational concerns of their businesses on the line. It's crucial for organizations of any sizes to have the proper measures in place to monitor suspicious network activity and even activity that's occurring on the dark web. Remember hearing about the WannaCry virus, targeting computers running on the Microsoft operating systems by encrypting data and demanding a form of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency as payments? That attack went around a few years ago, but many attacks don't have to be as notorious as the WannaCry virus to take a company down. Remember the attack that just happened a few months ago that took down the largest fuel pipeline in the US on the East Coast? That led to fuel shortages all across the East Coast, and that was the result of a single compromised password, according to the cybersecurity consultant who responded to the attack. Unfortunately, there is something that all of these breaches, phishing, and ransomware attacks have in common. And today, that is the human element. Your employees are your number one risk. An organization can have the best firewall in place, but all it takes for your company to fall victim to a ransomware attack or a phishing email is your employees sharing their credential in a bad email, or maybe they're clicking on links on the internet that they shouldn't be. But unfortunately, with just one click, an entire network can be affected by these security incidences. Before we get into some exciting screenshots of what exactly the dark web is, how this information, again, is winding up in the hands of the cyber criminals, I want to paint a picture for you. Here are some examples of third-party applications we all use in our everyday job function. Given how many platforms businesses use on an everyday basis, you don't have to connect too many dots to realize that we all have information that cyber criminals want and that they can sell on the dark web. Think about all the data that lives behind sites like these. In your CRM, you have customer records. In your HR and payroll sites, you may have social security numbers or financial information. You have a lot of services or a lot of information that lives behind your email services. And one thing that we want to keep in mind is what connects us to all of these third-party applications, and it's our email addresses and passwords. When a cyber criminal gets access to our email addresses and passwords, Unfortunately, they don't just steal this information. They can also use our email accounts, for example, to distribute phishing emails targeting our own customers or targeting our own contacts. Also, the more unfortunate part is when fraudsters get a hold of our email addresses and passwords, they use bots or an automated process where they can check an endless amount of accounts that we have created. And unfortunately, a lot of folks are reusing and recycling passwords amongst logins because in our business and personal life, we probably have close to 100 accounts that we log into. And because so many folks are reusing passwords amongst these logins, cyber criminals know that that's their open door or that open window to get through to the information that lives behind these logins. And unfortunately, when they go through that automated process and with those passwords being reused, it becomes highly possible for a fraudster to back channel their way through logins, getting a hold of even more of our sensitive information. And in the next couple screenshots, we're going to be looking at examples on the dark web, seeing how much money this data is going for on the dark web and talking about how it's, increasing the cybercrime and putting those increased threats on our businesses and really why we need to look at our own security. Now, with all that being said, this is when we really get into the fun part. The dark web itself, it's shrouded in mystery, and quite rightfully so. Again, it was created by the US Department of Defense to offer more anonymity to its users than the surface web. The dark web has become synonymous with the digital crime and the underground world, where everything is sold from weapons to drugs to stolen credit card information. The dark web is actually a portion of the deep web, and it's intentionally hidden and inaccessible through a standard web browser. The surface web, if we think about an iceberg, the surface web, it's the internet that we all know and love. The internet that we use to run our businesses, connects with our friends and families and customers on. The surface web itself only consists about 4 to 6% of the information on the internet. An estimated 92 to 96% of the internet lives below the surface. The deep web, before we get into the dark web, it's actually something that we still utilize. The deep web consists of data that we wouldn't be able to locate through a simple Google search. It's kind of that middle of the iceberg. The deep web has something very common uses, like our email services live on the deep web, online banking sites. Your doctor's office will keep patient profiles here. But again, as we start to move down that iceberg, there's a flip side to the deep web that's a lot murkier and sometimes a lot darker, and that's why it's known as the dark web. You can't just launch a Chrome or a Firefox browser to gain access to the dark web. Users need to go through a specific software, such as the Tor browser, which stands for the onion router. And yes, I know it sounds like a funky name, but onion routing is how people navigate the dark web or communicate anonymously. Because of the anonymous nature of the dark web, it's a hotbed for stolen data, as you can see from this screenshot. This particular website on the dark web is selling IDs. And check out the cost. The cost of buying an ID on the dark web is just a little bit over $6. Not very expensive to start compiling information that can help a cyber criminal commit identity fraud at the end of the day. Here is another example of a website on the dark web. This website is selling credit card information. And on this particular website, you can create a curated list based on the geography. And there's also instructions on this website for how to enter in billing addresses. And this particular website is also offering a discount if you buy in quantities. There might be various security threats while operating online, but stealing users' sensitive information and peddling out on the dark web monitoring is really the primary activity for these threat actors or the nefarious characters or the cyber criminals that's getting their hands on our information. Cyber criminals focus more on selling financial data like credit cards, debit card details, bank account numbers, and login credentials. A recent survey revealed that the rate cyber attacks in the financial industry has increased exponentially. Nearly 65% of major financial service organizations have suffered a cyber attack in the last 12 months. Usually, threat actors obtain credit card information or payment information in two ways. After a data breach, or they use the e-skimming technique, where they are using actual software at gas pumps, or when you're checking out in a business and you're actually using your credit card. Scammers will steal sensitive data by exploiting a vulnerability in an unsecured database containing vulnerable information. For instance, let's go back to that Capital One data breach. Attackers exploited a specific configuration vulnerability on its website and allegedly accessed over 100 million individuals in the US information and 6 million in Canada. Ever wonder where your stolen financial data is moved? Well, it's mostly misused by these attackers for their criminal activities, or it winds up on the dark web for sale. Cybercriminals often use stolen financial data to make fraudulent purchases online or to compromise other accounts via credential stuffing. Like I said, we have to go back to those email addresses and passwords. If you're logging into different logins and you're using the same password across accounts and financial information lives behind logins, that's oftentimes how these scammers are getting a hold of our information. Most times scammers obtain credit card numbers and our other financial data, again, is then being sold on these dark web forums, like we're looking at here in the screenshot. And unfortunately, you would think that a credit card would cost a little bit more money on the dark web. But as we can see here in this screenshot, stolen credit card data is going for just $10.99 a card. And again, these cyber criminals that are buying this information, they're often buying in bulk. And that just lessens the cost that they have to pay to get through to this information. Jumping into this next screenshot here, this is one of my favorite screenshots to go through. This is another example of a website on the dark web that is selling banking routing numbers. And this website is actually selling the largest known data dump for just under $10. This is a collection of data that includes the records of over 2.7 billion people. Alphabet, the website that's selling this information, was a popular website on the dark web. And in fact, this website's eerily similar to something like eBay or Amazon or Etsy that's an e-commerce site. Authorities say that this website trafficked every illicit good from fake and stolen IDs to our banking information, to computer hacking tools and other counterfeit goods. This site also facilitated such services as money laundering. As a company, Alphabet went as far to hire a scam watcher to put a stop to scams on their already illegal website. I say that and I kind of chuckle in my head because, again, these websites are run by criminals and selling information to other cyber criminals, which is so illegal in this space. Alphabet went as far and to employ a public relations manager responsible for outreach to its users and to broaden the illicit trade community. So to really, again, grow its business base. This site also employed moderators to resolve disputes and to refund payments when necessary. Overall, Alphabet took 2 to 4% commissions on all the deals made on this website, and that added up. The cybercriminal behind this website has an assumed fortune of $23 million. And as we get into further screenshots, some things I want to, make note of is just hear about how these businesses are being run on the dark web and the effects that it can have on our data and the increased demand in data breaches and phishing attacks. And again, why security should be front of mind for any organization. Here in this screenshot, it's an example of a classic supply and demand technique. This data set is so popular that it's sold out. I want to highlight that cybercriminal organizations, they're not all the same, but they typically have an infrastructure that looks like this, or that looks very similar to our business infrastructure. There's a CEO that oversees the broader goals of the organization. They hire and lead a series of product managers and directors who execute different parts of each cyber attack. If the goal of the group is to get money by hacking a company and stealing information, that series of directors and project managers will oversee different functions over the scopes of work so that the crime is to play out in their specializations and they can get more information so they can continue to make money off these websites. Again, criminal groups don't exist in a vacuum. They often offer essentially just what B2B businesses are to one another here and how we operate our businesses. You know, just like in the corporate world, corporate groups also have aggressive salespeople who work to displace their competitors by stealing different territories. So as you can see in this particular screenshot, the territory of this business is targeting California owners. And if you were to go on the dark web, you can often search by different geographies or different pieces of information that you're looking to buy and sell. And something that I want to make note of that we'll see in the titling of this screenshot, it says business fools of Californian data business owners. Fools indicates that you are getting every piece of information that you need to effectively steal the data. So it's going to include first names, last names, any sort of financial information, potentially even social security numbers, or any other data, again, to make that information effectively useful for the cyber criminal that's buying this data. Jumping into another screenshot here, this screenshot depicts sensitive data of over 100 million folks whose credit card and debit card information was leaked on the dark web. According to security researchers, this data included full names, phone numbers, and email addresses of the card holders, along with the first and last 4 digits of their cards. An interesting angle with this one is related to customer service. You'll have access to qualified support and you'll be able to provide feedback with a 100% response rate. Advanced cybercrime groups now mirror, again, legitimate organizations in the way that they operate, with a network of partners, associates, resellers, and vendors. Some groups even deploy call center operations to ensure maximum impact for their scanning efforts. The business of cybercrime, it's not like typical startup group model. Here's a product with a clear value proposition. They're even using integrated marketing campaigns and customer support services, risks and reward analysis, and research and develop, and more. So again, these businesses are booming on the dark web by selling our information, and it's only driving more of a security risks for our businesses at the end of the day. There are even deals such as Black Friday deals being offered and discounts being offered by these cyber criminals, again, that we're going to get into in the next slide, that's helping increase their efforts and selling this information. This is one of my other favorite screenshots to talk about because some cyber criminals differentiate their products by going through marketing gimmicks, like creating professional looking logos or offering holiday themed sales. It's not uncommon for cyber criminals to rebrand their product after some time to make even more money, or try to evade detection, because again, everything that happens on the dark web is 100% anonymous. A cyber criminal, rebranding is no different from a legitimate business rebranding efforts to, having updated marketing materials, packaging, and different offerings after they update their products or receiving more funding from an investor. Again, on the dark web, there's PR and customer support because, hey, imagine cyber criminals on the dark web needing to maintain a positive image. Reputation management is important since there are vendor review systems that are up for these products. We'll actually get to that in a little bit later on in a different screenshot. But again, on these websites on the dark web, you can leave reviews such as a Yelp review, talking about your experience buying their data. Maybe you bought data from them and it wasn't effective. Nobody wants a bad review. So again, these cyber criminals are increasing their efforts to make sure that the information that they're selling is viable and that the buyers are getting the value that they need from the data. Again, many cyber criminals provide customer support services since they know improving the customer experience helps them stay competitive and it'll differentiate their product in a crowded market space. Doesn't that sound like how we're all operating our businesses and how we're trying to make our money at the end of the day? Here's that screenshot. And as you can see in the orangish red bubble there, it says, thank you for giving us another chance to provide you with the best credit card details. So a lot of these sites, they want to have good reviews, and they're going to go above and beyond to get those reviews to increase the buyers of this data. You know, this website, it is selling debit card and credit card information, and this is a really popular website on the dark web. You know, this website is selling that information from anywhere between $5 and $110. This is another one of those full package purchase sites for the fraudsters. So if you were to buy this information, you're going to get the stolen credit card name, the social security number, the birth date of the account holder, and any numbers associated with that account to really make the card effective. Sites like this will even discreetly mail you the card, so your neighbors will have no idea what you're up to, and you can go out to a physical business and start using this information. And again, a lot of this is all based off of the different reviews that the cyber criminals buying this information is leaving, indicating that these sites are the ones that you need to go to and the ones that you need to buy from. Hopping into another screenshot here, you'll see one thing that I want to highlight here is the text boxes. You know, businesses are a common target for these dark web criminals because businesses tend to have a little bit more of a cash flow. Also, unfortunately, this allows cyber criminals to feel better about stealing from, let's say, Main Street Flowers because they're sticking it to the corporations. You know, one thing that I've heard from several businesses is my company is too small. Cyber criminals won't want our data. Unfortunately, that isn't the case anymore, and we've really seen a shift over the last couple years. Large companies or Fortune 500 companies usually have whole departments focused on data storage and protection, which is usually not possible for small businesses, or they think it's not possible. We'll get to that here in a few slides. But according to the Keeper's Cybersecurity 2020 threat study, 6 out of 10 small businesses have no digital defense plan to prevent cyber attacks. You know, as the small businesses grow their online platforms, small business owners must understand best practices to keep their company and client data protected. Increased online traffic can put a small business at a greater risk to be the victims of cybercrime, including identity theft, data breaches, malware, and ransomware. The impact of cyber attacks are devastating, no matter the size of the business. In 2020, cyber attacks cost small businesses on average of $35,000. Additionally, businesses typically become aware of a data breach after 100 days, meaning that cyber criminal had access to your data, your infrastructure for over 100 days. This leads to a couple different things. You know, repeated cyber attacks against your organization, a lot of reputational damage, depending on your customers, because potentially they've launched phishing attacks against them using your email services. Or potentially at the end of the day, you know, you have the financial implications that come through after a data breach. And at that point, if it's been over 100 days, a lot of the times it's too late. So it's important to have services in place to help you detect when your information is going to wind up on the dark web, such as dark web monitoring. You know, again, just to really drive home how lucrative of a business cybercrime is, here's a job posting actually for an open job that's on the dark web. You know, modern cyber attacks, again, like phishing, can be highly profitable for these cyber criminals with seemingly low success rates, around 1%. Again, the launch of a phishing attack, it doesn't cost these cyber criminals much, and they can yield thousands or even millions of dollars in revenue just from stealing your information. Having this proven, predictable business model has enabled cyber criminals to attract investors and other folks looking to make money as well. And in a market where money can be made, you're going to find a pool of talented individuals. This job ad is for a software designer on the dark web. This position has a starting salary of just under $800,000. And over the course of 2 years, this person would be slated to make over $1 million. Now, I'm not calling out my employer, but I've been with my company for way more than 2 years, and I am making nowhere near this amount of money. So again, just put into perspective how much money is being made in the dark web space, how they're making the money. It's unfortunately off our data. And because they're seeing such a lucrative business, it's only driving more cyber attacks, data breaches, and malware and ransomware attacks for our businesses that we need to protect ourselves against. You know, I mentioned earlier hearing about cyber attacks in the news. And I'm certain if you keep up to date with things, you've probably heard about Zoom bombings. And since the COVID-19 pandemic has forced so many companies to switch to working remote, maybe some folks are back in the office, or it's a hybrid workforce, Zoom and other video conferencing services, they've really enjoyed the surge in popularity. Unfortunately, though, Zoom users have become a target for cybercriminals. There are several Zoom accounts that are currently either for sale or being given away on hacker forums on the dark web. The credentials to these accounts don't seem to be obtained from any cyber attacks against Zoom or the Zoom infrastructure, so I want to preface that. But how the cyber criminals or these unwanted guests are winding up in meetings is how we're sharing our Zoom links or our video conferencing links. Virtual happy hours have become very popular, and they're fun to attend. However, if you're posting your Zoom link or your video conferencing link on an open forum like LinkedIn or Facebook, I would definitely think twice about doing that, because that's how the cyber criminals or these hackers are winding up as unwanted guests in the meeting. If you are going to be hosting any sort of virtual event, make sure that you're only sharing those Zoom links or video conferencing links within the calendar invite that's populated after somebody registers. Again, it's just going to help your business remain safer at the end of the day, and it's going to prevent, again, those unwanted guests from popping in. Now, before we kind of get into some positive things and different ways that we can protect our businesses, I must mention ransomware, just given that Colonial Pipeline attack that plagued the gas industry and the pipeline industry here on the East Coast. Ransomware, it's a public extortion. It has become a favorite of cyber criminals, unfortunately. Essentially, they will use data obtained in the ransomware attack to publicly extort a business and then demand a form of cryptocurrency to get that business's information back. Unfortunately, why we've seen a surge in ransomware is because anybody can become a hacker these days, thanks to ransomware as a service. All it takes is a little bit of research and Bitcoin to purchase an email flooding service on the dark web. In fact, with the multi-million-dollar success of SamSam, a type of ransomware attack that is carried out by hand, we expect to see ransomware as a service kits to continue to appeal to cyber criminals. Even the lower skilled ones happy to rake in a few hundred or a few $1,000s with minimum effort. The money-making cyber criminal cycle is fairly straightforward, as we talked about. Every successful ransomware attack or phishing attack makes hackers money, providing them with more resources for their next set of attacks. For example, one hacker may purchase Bitcoin, use that Bitcoin to buy stolen credit cards, use those stolen credit cards to buy even more Bitcoin, purchase ransomware as a service kits, and rake in more cryptocurrency, and the cycle is going to run endlessly. Attacks aren't always aimed at endpoints either or end users. Hackers may also target an organization's server and sell that stolen information or even access the server itself. And server data, it really does go for a premium price on the dark web. Because these attacks are so devastating to a business and goldmine for hackers, it's really a wealth of critical data that can be obtained through a security incident, which usually includes anything from personally identifiable information or confidential property, including those financial records that we don't want to wind up in the hands of cyber criminals. Rapid innovation in any industry usually comes with side effects, and the world of the dark web is no exception. Anything is driven by economics will be faced with that supply and demand issues. As server attacks continue to grow and ransomware markets become continuously saturated with available toolkits, it's going to be especially difficult for hackers to sustain this profitability. However, that's when they're going to turn back to things like data breaches and phishing attacks. And it's really an endless cycle of cybersecurity threats that we're going to be faced especially as we live in an increasingly digital world and we see more and more of our information winding up in the cloud. Now, I know my entire presentation sounds like it's all doom and gloom, but there's really a lot of things that we can be doing to protect our business against these cyber threats. And first and foremost, I think it's time for everybody to partner with a trusted security advisor. It's likely that you work with an accountant when it comes to tax time. And with the increase in cyber threats, we really see partnering with a trusted security advisor as a next best step. Major events like the coronavirus pandemic, they're creating new opportunities for cyber criminals to exploit, but smart defense doesn't let them. And I'm going to provide you some tips to help keep your data safer. But again, it's important to talk to a security advisor to see what of your information could potentially already be in the hands of a cyber criminal, where your vulnerabilities live, and what you can do to protect your business in the future. I think one of the most important steps when it comes to protecting your organization is monitoring your company's domain for signs that your information may already be sold on the dark web. This is crucial because, like I said, typically a company only finds out that they've gone through a data breach 100 days after the fact. And that's a lot of time for a cyber criminal to have their hands on your information. So if you have something like dark web monitoring in place, you would know within, a matter of moments that your information is on this space, and you can go in and change those passwords that are found, or look to see the information that the cyber criminal has got their hands on. And if it is financial data, you can call your bank right away and get your card put on hold or even switch over your account numbers. One thing outside of monitoring your company's domain for signs that your credentials have been exposed on the dark web, please don't open unknown emails. I always say use the 20-second rule. The CDC recommends that we take 20 seconds to wash our hands to avoid germs. We recommend that you take 20 seconds to review suspicious looking emails. We all know how busy we get in our everyday tasks, but if you're clicking on links or sharing credentials and phishing emails that you shouldn't be, you're putting your company at risk for a security incident. Try to use a VPN connection while working. Update your software regularly. I know how bothersome it is to be, thick into your day. You get the Windows alert that it's time for your PC to go through an update, but please go through the update because cyber criminals, they prey on vulnerabilities like we talked about. They look for vulnerabilities in infrastructures and websites that we're using, and they use those vulnerabilities to launch further attacks. One other bit of information, if you can use multi-factor authentication, certainly do that. Use work devices only for work purposes. And if your employees are moving towards the hybrid workforce, it never hurts to create a remote employee work policy, just kind of laying out best practices when it comes to your security. Because at the end of the day, it's no longer a matter of if you're going to go through a security incident. In this increasingly digital world, it's more so when that's going to happen to our companies. And we need to be prepared to combat those and not be a sitting duck when they occur. But I know I've done a lot of talking throughout this presentation, and I'd love to flip things back over and let our friends at LambTech take it from here.
All right, thank you very much, Katie. Some good sound advice, especially there at the end to help protect your employees. Good advice to take a good second look at all your email. And if you always have any questions, just to contact people like us here at LambTech. So thank you to Katie for your expertise today. We appreciate your time today and learn more about digital risk. If you're a current client and you want to see how what you learned today pertains to your agreement, feel free to call us after the webinar. If you're wanting to learn more about LambTech and our offerings, you can always call me direct at 660-851-7342 and also learn even more at lambtech.com. Also, George is available, our general manager. Thanks to him for monitoring things in the background. Thank you and have a fantastic day.